Good morning and welcome to NUFC Matters, an early morning one for us as we both got busy days. I've got to jump on a Danish podcast as well at 11:30, so only 45 minutes today. Liam, that means you've got to keep your answers a lot shorter than usual because we've got a hell of a lot of questions to get through, some on Twitter, and the questions are piling up in the chat already. So I'll ask the first question from Tom Dixon, which is, Liam, any news on a new manager?
Yeah, Tom, it looks like they've finally come to a decision and selected their man. It sounds like the one who, according to reports elsewhere, didn't divide opinion as much. We've just had a little chat off air. It definitely divided opinion between us, but it looks like Unai Emery is going to be the next manager of Newcastle United, provided everything goes to plan. With regards to the sorting out of compensation and negotiations, it looks as though that Newcastle United have got their man. And for me, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I think it's an incredible appointment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Tom, I just want a new manager in place. It's got to be the right person. I'm delighted the new owners have taken their time, despite a little bit of criticism from a small percentage of people on Twitter. But ultimately, from my perspective, they will know who the right person is, I think. And, these people, as I keep saying, are, businessmen, businesswomen who know exactly what they're doing. And from my perspective, I think, if Unai Emery has come in, his CV, as Liam has said, is very, very good. If he has come in and made the right impression and is saying everything that they want to hear, and, it's backed up by stats, then, give him a go. I say I would much rather have him in than, as me and Liam discussed off air, somebody like Eddie Howe, who, although did a great job of getting Bournemouth from lower divisions into the Premier League, managed to keep them in the Premier League for a period before, obviously, the usual thing happened. The club started to sell all the star players and eventually they were relegated. It's not great that, and with the amount of money that is going to be available in the transfer window to this new manager. Again, Eddie Howe doesn't have the track record, I don't think, for spending big money. So Unai Emery does. He's used to dealing with big name players, and obviously, as Liam said, if they can sort out a compensation package, we would like to think that by the time we get to Brighton at the weekend, the new man will be sitting in the stands. I always had a hope out, and I'm sure we'll come across this in the chat as well, that Rafa would somehow go through a horrendous spell at the start of the season. Well, he has, but it might just be too little too late. He might find himself out of work and a new man in Newcastle's hot seat as he's out of work if results keep going the way they go. So we will wait.
Steve, can I come in on that one on the Rafa thing? And what I would say about to anybody who was maybe expecting Everton to jump so quickly on Benitez, yes, they get the strength of opinion that there is in some parts of the fan base who are ready to jump on his back immediately because of those Liverpool connections. But what I would say is that having taken the time and effort, and it was a long managerial search for Everton, it wasn't a decision they took overnight, to have gone for Rafa and then to pull the trigger on him so soon into the season, when there have been positive signs at certain points in the season, I think would be quite, it just wouldn't make sense. So I'd be surprised if they pull the plug on Benitez. But it could, like you say, Steve, be one of those situations whereby that he was all set. He was an integral part of this takeover process from the very start, going back 2017 or whenever it was. And it's always kind of been written in the stars that Rafa Benitez would come back and would build Newcastle United in his image from bottom to top, academy and coaching setups and scouting networks and the first team, of course, training grounds and other things. But it appears as if the timings have just not quite come together on this one. He jumped at Everton, and I think he's probably quite happy jumping at Everton because it's his adopted hometown. It's where his family live. It's his family home. So I think he's probably quite happy there. Whether it'll ever be fully accepted by the Everton fan base is nothing altogether. Of course, we know he was loved here, but there was no job for him in the summer when he was so desperate for a job. And now, what are we now? Just ticking over into November. There's a free job there for him. If he just not done Rafa Benitez things and not taking certain jobs and decisions like that, then he could have been in here at Newcastle. But what I would say on the plus point for him is, I don't think he could have picked many better jobs for him personally, given that it's on his doorstep. It's a good project where he can build. He's just got to make sure that he's given the time. Emery, for me, I know I'm going to keep these answers short. I'm going to do a little monologue now, and I'll try and keep the rest short. Emery, for me, is a serial winner. His CV speaks for itself in every way, shape, or form. We only have to roll back to last season to look at Emery taking a team, not a storied, fancied team in Villarreal, taking them to winning the Europa League. His record in Europe is unbelievable. He's done it with clubs in the past, obviously with Sevilla. He's done it with PSG. He's got a really good record at PSG, even though he did end up after 2 years, he did end up getting booted there, but he's got a really good record. I mean, you just have to look at what he did before Arsenal. That was. I mean, he won cups, he won leagues. The equivalent of the League Cup. He won trophies galore. He won the Europa League 3 years on the bounce at Sevilla. I mean, it is an incredible one. But a lot of people, obviously, we only deal in what we see. A lot of people are looking and say, well, look at what happened at Arsenal. I think a lot of Arsenal fans would swap Arteta back for Emery because they thought they were going on to bigger and better things by taking on Arteta, and it's been a disaster for them. Look, of course, he wasn't Wenger. He had to come in and carry on from the king, who'd built an empire for 20, 25 years at that football club, and it was never going to be easy. But you just have to look at his record everywhere else. And I think he'll be coming to England, provided, like I say, everything goes well, come to England with a real point to prove. He'll feel like there was unfinished business there. And one thing you'll definitely get is organisation. And I think he relies a lot on midfielders, deep line midfielders, sort of pivot players. Has a really well drilled, organised side, 4 at the back normally, from memory of the kind of teams that he plays. But so I think what we'll see is a real sea change, and this is the kind of statement appointment that Newcastle United need to make. I think you could argue that there were doubts about every other single candidate in the list. Martinez, little bit of a bad taste. People are like, is he really that good? Even though he's been the Belgian manager. Go to Eddie Howe. Has he done it anywhere? He was at Bournemouth and did a really good building job there, but his team's conceded a lot of goals also. Fonseca, I've admitted to myself that I don't know a massive amount of him. He has a good CV, really good CV also, but is traditionally known for his really attacking sides. Is that really what we need to be employing here at Newcastle, or do we need to sort of shut up shop a little bit as well? Does it need to be a bit of both ways? Lucien Favre nearly got the Crystal Palace job in the summer. Would have been a really positive appointment, and things go disastrous, could end up still potentially being an appointment in Newcastle United. But again, doubts about, is he the type of manager who can take you on a level? And there's been that weighing up of the process. Do Newcastle United need a firefighter to come in, like a Roy Hodgson, for example, and just keep them in the division and move on? Do they need to bring somebody in at the very top level? Well, the people at the very, very top level aren't wanting to take a Newcastle United job because there isn't a massive amount of football infrastructure there. Emery, I would argue, is in that next level below elite, and to have gone and potentially got somebody in that bracket is quite a statement from Newcastle United's new owners. And I'll admit, I'll be one of those people who was getting a little bit nervous, just looking at the games ticking by, looking at the points, looking at the predicament in the league. It's hard not to panic, but it looks like if at the end of this they come out with an Unai Emery, then the wait will have been more than worth it.
Okay, very positive words on the potential new manager from Liam. What do you think? Drop your comments into the comment box below. Life Goals on Twitter says, when would Liam expect work on the academy, the stadium and training facility infrastructure to commence? Does he think there's scope to use current locations for elite facilities, or will the owners be looking for new areas to place him? I can answer a partial part of that question in the sense that I went up to the club yesterday for a meeting with one of the top men in Sodexo, who obviously runs the catering facilities, etc. at Newcastle. Many of you will know that I've done a lot of events at Newcastle in the past, but under the previous owner, I was pretty much persona non grata. I decided to walk away as well from doing any events up there because of the ownership. And I went up for a meeting, a coffee, and it all sounds very positive, I think, with regards to how things are going to be addressed at the club. There was no time scale. It sounds as if it's going to be ongoing over the next 12 months, but there's certainly plans afoot. to improve the stadium, to improve the facilities, and to improve the corporate areas. And, I think, the delight on the guy's face who I met yesterday about the fact that, the corporate areas are all full now and fully booked, and, selling these corporate areas, which has been a massive issue over the last few seasons, especially when people have walked away, is now a thing of the past, because there's an optimism, there's hope, and people are wanting to go to the games. So I think what they want to do now is readdress that stuff. So it's great. The fact that I got an invite up from somebody up there now, I think it's a positive step in the right direction. And hopefully you'll be seeing some of our ex-Newcastle United players events going ahead, at the stadium again. So that's positive. Have you heard anything with regards to the training facility, Liam?
No, nothing beyond the idea that I think the training facility itself and the current location is one that is under serious consideration about moving away from there. Locations beyond that, I'm not sure at all. But I think anybody who's been in and around the training ground, probably in the last, God, you could almost roll it back 10 to 15 years. It's changed so little. There's been some cosmetic work, some bits and bobs have changed. For example, the gym and other places have been improved, but really it's a quite small footprint for a facility of Premier League standards. It's got everything you need, but is it everything you would want? And I think that's something that they're coming to grips with now, is that a change will likely happen. But those type of things aren't short term. They're the things that take time, and they're not things that will happen overnight. So I get it. Everybody out there wants everything now, but things will start moving. And the first thing that had to be addressed is getting the football infrastructure right, and then everything beyond that comes as a bonus. This season, I would say.
Yeah, Tom Dixon again in with another question, which I think everybody will want an answer to. Fernandez obviously told a story that was broken in the Shields Gazette by Miles Starforth, that there was no place for him on the Newcastle bench. Wondering if there's been a falling out, Tom says.
I hadn't heard any news of a falling out, to be honest. But I read that I wasn't at the game in a professional capacity at the weekend, but I did read those questions the answers to those questions quite intently, and was very surprised by that kind of answer. I think a lot of people out there, despite Fernandez's age, would agree with me that he is still probably Newcastle United's best central defender at the football club, and to not even find a place for him on the bench with some kind of bizarre policy of would you, if you're winning, would you bring him on? If you're losing, would you bring him on? It doesn't really make sense. Like, I think most people would say he should be in the team. But look, those are little things that I think that, look, I've been a big advocate of Graham Jones, but there have been some criticisms. He's not a manager, for a start. And has he been doing the managerial things right over the last couple of weeks? Look, it's hard. It's hard to criticise. I think he's done a decent-ish job, but there were cracks galore in that game against Chelsea. He tried to shut up shop, did a lot more than shut up shop. It was utterly dreadful, to be honest. And I think the managerial stuff, what I'm pointing at is this decision on Fernandez, the Darlow decision, I think probably surprised me. I'd asked the question last week, but had an inkling myself that Dubravka was ready to play, and wondered if he would be thrown straight in, because I think most people, again, would have thrown him straight into the side, given that he's Newcastle United's head and shoulders above anybody else, the best goalkeeper of the football club. So it was a surprise. But was that Graham Jones saying, it's not going to be my decision, I'm not going to rock the boat on that one, I'll leave that decision up to a new manager? Potentially. It potentially could be, but I think Jones will remain at the football club, because I know that'll be a question that people throw in here, and I think there needs to be an element of continuity. But in what role is yet unspecified.
I was going to say, I find that rather strange that he's already been given assurances that he's staying. I mean, if it is Emery coming in, I mean, I haven't done the research into into who he brings and who he's worked with in the past.
Yeah.
But that would leave me scratching my head a little bit if people were going to remain from the previous regime, and new broom sweeps all's what would normally happen. And I find it rather strange that Graham Jones has been given that guarantee. But I guess we'll find out in due course. Neil Davison on Twitter asks, do you expect the director of football to be announced first, then the manager or coach, because he thinks it's a little short-sighted to appoint the other way if they don't align in tactics. Now, again, this has all been pure speculation on behalf of the media that the consortium want to get a director of football in. Is that something that you've picked up on with your contacts?
Yeah, I think there will be a director of football at Newcastle United. And I think it is important that those two align, because you do have major issues. We've seen it at other football clubs who employ the same model. But I've said this on here and I'll say it again, that I think, unfortunately, I think the normal process of building the football infrastructure, having a manager already here, then replacing the manager, went out the window when it was quickly realised that Bruce wasn't even a safe enough firefighter to sit there and just keep things, or a gatekeeper just to keep things ticking over. He was incapable of doing that. Obviously, Graham Jones has ticked it over at Selhurst Park. Then there was the Chelsea game, which, look, it was a par score result, but I think it was more the nature in which it happened. There has been a need for a manager before the need for a director of football. Newcastle's, it's okay saying in theory you want a director of football first for a lot of things outside of the original sort of first team setup, but the most pressing element of the football club at the moment is the first team. Somebody needs to come in and have an impact on the football pitch. This isn't broad brush. This isn't blue sky thinking. This isn't thinking outside the box, building in a club ethos, building a way of playing, a culture. This isn't any of that. We need a manager who's going to come in and organise a football team. So I think, yes, there is an idea that it probably should be the other way around, but that Newcastle's new owners have come in and had to assess the situation and adapt very quickly, because Steve Bruce more than proven himself that he was incapable of keeping things ticking over and keeping their heads above water. Because look, and blame went Graham Jones' way, and he does deserve some blame for the Chelsea game in particular. And it wasn't great at Crystal Palace. They really just somehow got a point out of nowhere. But what I would say is that what we're seeing now, a culmination of that 2.5 years under Steve Bruce, and much further, that 15 years, nearly 15 years of Mike Ashley now, really, really ringing home how difficult and how tough things are at Newcastle United. But a new manager with a kind of pedigree of an Unai Emery, if that's who it turns out to be, which is who they seem to be going for now. Well, they have. That's who they're going for. That if they can get him in, then it's a real positive move, because it's a massive sea change from the type of manager that Newcastle United have had over the last 15 to 20 years. It's parallels with a Rafa Benitez appointment in many ways. Hasn't quite won the European Cup like Rafa has, but Emery, widely regarded across the European game as being one of the best managers out there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think it's all about opinions, and if he comes in, I think there'll be a lot of happy people. There'll be a lot of people scratching their heads and hoping it'll be somebody else. But we will wait and see. Twitter again. Trevor Arkell from Thailand. He basically says, just about the naming rights of the stadium. Do you think that's a good idea? And he's also saying, would you move the ground? Because he just feels that the ground's cursed. He also feels that the way that it could be expanded is going to make it look tacky and lopsided. It would be far better to build new stadiums. So 2 questions in one there from Trevor.
I think the idea of moving is a really tough one. I would rather stay where we are, but if it's a need for progress, then I'm not totally against it. But I think a lot of avenues need to be explored about expanding the stadium, because there is going to be a massive growth in the amount of people wanting tickets, not just in the area, but much wider as well. You've got to think of the growth of the football club probably over the next 3 to 5 years in the Gulf, and you will get the football tourist idea of people probably coming over from that area, and I'm all for that. Like, I'm really positive on that front. Newcastle United was in a position in the 90s, as Manchester United were, to build a real worldwide fan base, and and then dropped off the radar and dropped off a cliff in the way, and Manchester United went the opposite direction. So I think this is a real opportunity for Newcastle to become a massive football club around the world again. And I think with that, 52,000 is already feeling a little bit tight. So I think there needs to be some thought into expansion. Would I move? I don't want to move, but if it means if Newcastle United's new current stadium can't be expanded and improved upon enough to supply to satisfy the demand, then I think it would have to seriously be considered. And look, of course, it pulls on the heartstrings. Of course, it does, but progress isn't going to wait for anybody. And Newcastle United, I want Newcastle United to be the biggest, best football club it possibly can be. If that means moving, then so be it.
Lee Major said, what does a new man coming in need to do between now and the 1st of January to get a result from this squad?
Big question. And that's why they'll be getting paid a lot more money than I'll ever see to make those decisions. What I would say is that I think instilling a bit of confidence back in the side wouldn't be a bad thing. I feel like this squad's been battered from pillar to post with ridiculous amounts of tactical changes, ridiculous amounts of personnel changes. I think there needs to be a little bit of consistent thinking, some positive changes with regards to training, going back to basics for some of them. And that's why I liked what Jones was talking about last week about the 5 days training. It was quite clearly a dig at Bruce in a lot of ways, because he was sort of having them in 3 days some weeks. So I think there are. Look, I don't think Newcastle United are a million miles away. I think they've got real problems in terms of quality in their squad, but I think an organiser could come in and get something much better out of that squad. So just doing the basics, stopping Newcastle United conceding and stopping them conceding chances, because they're so easy to create chances against and have been throughout the season, all 11 games. Sorry, 10 games, take the League Cup out of it. 10 games this season, they've been so easy to create chances against. And I think that's got to be the priority, because as a football club, Newcastle United needs to stay in the Premier League. And the appointment of somebody of the standard of an Unai Emery gives them absolutely every chance.
Yeah, okay. Plenty of questions coming in on the chat. I will get to them before the end of the show. I do want to touch on a couple of other Twitter questions that were asked. Terence Trundley says, I think Nuno would be the best man for the job. He'd keep them up and he'd get some decent players in January. What are your thoughts on this, Liam?
No, not for me. Look, don't get us wrong, I would take a Nuno because it would still be a step up, but would I choose a Nuno? No, I wouldn't. I think the links with Mendes and the type of signings and the shape of that football club, the direction it was going in at Wolves, I didn't think was particularly great. In terms of like the manager, is he really that good a manager? I'm not really sold that he is. And I think he relies very heavily on basically what he's dealt on his plate by Jorge Mendes. And I think it's with Mendes, as we've seen with some of his recent ones in the Premier League, can be a right mixed bag. And I just don't like the idea of that at Newcastle United. Would I take Nuno as a manager? Is he a step up on Jones? Is he a step up on Bruce? Of course he is, absolutely. But in an ideal world, would I choose him out of a list of candidates that are already there? No, I wouldn't.
Okay, this is a good one actually from Ben Willits. He says, just for something different from our current situation, we often talk about Keegan, Robson and Harvey as our greatest managers. All were given 5 years plus. I saw last week it was 12 years since Chris Hughton got the job full time. Where would you rank him in our history? He said, given the short period he was given, awful show he inherited, fact he wasn't made permanent till October and still galvanised us and got us promoted and then took us to mid-table whilst overseeing the rise of players like Carroll. Has there ever been a more impactful manager at Newcastle United? Great question.
I think it's all relative, of course, isn't it? I think it's all relative. Yeah, it was a good time. I'll be honest, it was a really positive time, wasn't it? Following Newcastle United during that period, I would say take out the probably the first, what would you say, month maybe of that championship season, which really was a bit ropey from memory. West Brom the first day, a couple of home games weren't, they were tough, but they got a real momentum about them, and just the players were a good solid bunch and carried them through. And then they had the little boost in January, adding a little bit of pace and creativity and routage, adding another centre half in Mike Williamson, and they really went on from strength to strength there in that season. And then, like you say, to come in and have an impact in the Premier League like they did, and that 12 months from the January in the Championship season to the December, the rise of Andy Carroll was absolutely incredible. There were very few forwards in the English game at that time who had the impact of Andy Carroll. He was a monster in the air physically, scored goals, any kind of goal as well from distance, lovely left foot. And obviously Hughton has to take a huge amount of credit for that rise and managing the player correctly during that time. Because there were times at Newcastle United in his youth career that a lot of people didn't think Andy Carroll would make it at Newcastle United. So to have had the career and gone on to be an incredible player that he was great, and Hughton deserves a lot of credit for that. But really ranking him in terms of managers, that look, he didn't. You've got to go with regards to managers who actually won things at Newcastle United, and that's going a long way back. But you can't really sort of put him anywhere near any of those. But beyond that, look, Chris Hughton is a really positive influence at Newcastle United, and it was a shame the way it left, because having met him and spoken to him after his time at Newcastle United in other jobs that he's had, a really respectful individual, really somebody that you enjoyed speaking to, a nice guy, and it was a shame the way it ended. But it was one of those things that it kind of epitomised the lack of respect that ran through the club while Mike Ashley was the owner.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Okay, let's come to some of the questions and points made on YouTube. Darren says Emery problem at Arsenal was learning English. I mentioned that Liam off air actually, and most of the players cannot understand him. Wouldn't he have the same problems at Newcastle? Look, he had a bit of experience down there afterwards, and I think he picked up English fairly well after that. So Liam said off air to me that he didn't think that would be an issue, and I'd probably go with him. Dave says, morning, Steve and Liam and chatters, hope you're well. Morning, Dave. Good to see you last week at the Gavin Peacock event. With Amanda saying that the infrastructure needs to improve before we can bring the best players to the club, how long do you think it will be before we see a new training ground underway? Again, Ben, we talked about that slightly earlier if you missed it, but you can catch that at the start of the programme. Tim says it's now time for a wholesale clear out with the squad we just have isn't good enough to keep us up. Tim, there was a lot of chatter at the events that we had over the weekend. I did Robley on Thursday, Gavin Peacock on Friday. Obviously, we had the match on Saturday, so I was working with Supermac. I was out with Steve Howie, Lee Clark, and that for their birthday on Saturday night. I think most people would agree, Liam, that there are wholesale changes need to be made. It's an aging squad. It's a squad that's played together for a long time. But new faces are required ASAP, and hopefully the checkbook we now have will mean that some of the names that we've seen linked this week, will be coming through the door of SJP in January.
Well, hopefully, Steve. I think it's one of those. It's a drum that I've been banging since January of this year. As everyone who watches the show regularly, that it was one that flew under the radar for a lot of people, because centre midfield and another striker were the two key things that everybody looked at in the last window, saying that we needed. But I've been banging the drum that the central defensive unit at Newcastle United is aging, and it's too samey, and it was always going to hit a point where Premier League front lines would tear it to pieces. And we're at that point now. And it was something that was on the priority list for Steve Bruce and the Newcastle United recruitment team in the summer. But the want to bring Joe Willock to the football club overrode anything with regards to getting a central defender in, or at least one or maybe two. There needs to be some... It's one thing that I think will be quite quickly addressed by any new manager, is that a central defender with some pace, central defender with a bit of athleticism, because Newcastle United have far too many players who are probably just getting to the point where they're either not good enough or they're going slightly over the hill. Put Fernandez and Lascelles either side of that, whichever way you want. Put Kieran Clark, whichever side you want, maybe on both for some of these players. Paul Dummett, is he really a player that Newcastle can rely on to play any more than 15 to 20 games per season? his last few seasons have absolutely proven that probably is the case. Emil Kraft, is he really a Premier League defender? I think he might struggle to get a game in some championship sides and the qualities that he has. And then that's going further. There's Fabian Schär, who has limitations but is potentially a decent defender on his day. I think there's some easy decisions you make. You bring some players into the side. Dubravka makes a big impact, but it needs addressed. And I don't know how many games are off from January now, but I think it's still double figures. So
yeah,
I think
13, I think, is it?
So there still needs to be a lot of work done with the players here and now, and wholesale changes in January, I would imagine, might be difficult. But I would imagine that you could still look to bring 4 quality players in to improve the side, walk straight into the first team, and push Newcastle United away from any troubles that they might have. There will be a renew. Got to remember, it's been very negative, I would say, since Crystal Palace. People gave it a chance at Chelsea, and Chelsea was a very negative. There was a lot of negativity in the city on Saturday night, and I think the appointment of a new manager comes at exactly the right time. This is the ace that they had in the pack that they needed to play, and they needed to play it sooner rather than later, because allowing the situation to fester into this month, which this month is the crucial month for me. This is the crucial month about whether Newcastle can pull themselves. If they can get themselves back in the mix, back with the teams above them by winning a few games, then December looks less daunting. But if you're still playing catch up going into December, then that's a real problem. And I think your new manager will bring that impetus. You look at the games that they've got. I think they've got a couple of back-to-back home games at the end of the month, Burnley and Norwich, I think. You've got to look at that. They've got Brentford. And Brentford have had a great season. But if you want your next home game against anybody, they're probably one of the teams you would pick. It's a winnable game. Newcastle United need to think that way. And with a new manager behind them, they need to have that bounce. The atmosphere will be really good again. It'll be a positive place to be. So look, they need to get some points on the board. And if they go into December in the mix, which they're not at the moment, they're 6 points adrift. But if they go in the mix, then I think January then becomes a real point to push you away from that, get you into the mid-table. And who knows? It depends if you can get yourself back in the mix by December. Then you might start looking at an FA Cup and say, why can't you have a run in that competition? So look, it's something that's ebbing and flowing, this negativity and positivity. There's a really strange atmosphere at the moment in Newcastle United, and it can change very quickly. And the appointment of somebody of the calibre of Unai Emery takes you from that real negative spot of Jones, Bruce Ball Mark II, and negativity from Saturday to look, God, we've went and got ourselves a world-class manager.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle fan comedy saying, have we got a chance of bringing anyone that will improve us on this level? I think the answer is yes to that. I think Liam's already said that. There's no doubt about it. We've seen some big names linked. Connor Cody, obviously, as a centre-half. Lingard, we've seen linked. We've got a lot of players linked, and some of these are out of contract. They'll do the deals themselves. So I don't think it'll be a struggle. And if you've got a world-class manager coming in, someone who's worked in the Premier League, someone who's done well, across the continent, who's got the respect of players, makes all the difference. So, Emery comes in. I don't think we'll have a struggle bringing, that kind of player in. Paul says, with the Emery rumours gaining some traction this morning, it seems like they're going for a longer-term appointment from the outset. Is he the man to get us out of the brown stuff?
Yeah, it's more than it. That's what I was hinting at earlier. It's more than your firefighter. It's an Emery appointment isn't a how 18-month type of appointment. It's a one of those where it could be a 3, 4, 5 year thing if he keeps things moving in the correct direction. It's a definite medium term to long term appointment, and I think, look, all credit to them if they've gone and got somebody like that, because it would be I think it's a really positive move. And like I say, as I mentioned earlier, akin with the Rafa Benitez appointment.
Dean says, what do you think it suggests that we've seen zero reaction from the players in the last 2 games? You'd think they'd be fighting for the future at the club. Got to agree, been very little reaction. Some have actually gone backwards, if that was possible.
Yeah, I think the lack of reactions really surprised me. I think there was no noticeable uplift from the takeover, no noticeable uplift from Steve Bruce leaving the football club. Not really tangible, slightly more organised at Crystal Palace. You could argue slightly more organised against Chelsea, but really did they look like a squad of players who feel like their future's on the line? I'm not sure they did. I think you will see that under a new manager, and an international break is absolutely spot on for a new manager, because it'll give him that few weeks. Newcastle don't have a whole host of internationals. Let's be brutally honest about this. So the majority of the group will be remaining with the new manager, and I think you'll see, hopefully, with, like I say, November is a huge month. I think that'll be the. From the international break onwards, whatever happens at Brighton, at Newcastle United, you'll hopefully see a different Newcastle United, even with the same players. I think you will.
People know that we sometimes get asked some bizarre questions on here. Mike Gent's at it again. Bacon sandwich with ketchup or Daddy's brown sauce? And he says, is it with PG tips or Yorkshire?
Mike, Daddy's, no, not for me. Like HP brown sauce. No messing around. And what was the other question?
PG tips or Yorkshire tea?
I'm not really a massive tea drinker. I'll have anything that gets put in the pot, me. But I would normally go for a coffee.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I don't have sauce on my sandwich. I just have crispy bacon and mushrooms, me, with a bit of butter on. That's my preferred choice. I think sauce.
Crispy. It has to be crispy, like.
I think sauce ruins it, to be honest. And out of PG tips in Yorkshire, got to be honest, I really like Yorkshire. But I think we get Aldi's version of tea bags these days. I couldn't tell you, but it tastes all right. So no complaints. No complaints from me. Mark says, good evening, lads. Steve, how did your meeting go yesterday? Can you give us any news? I did it at the top of the show. It went very well. The doors are open again for Steve Wraith, which is very nice. Although I've never been banned from the club. They just didn't want to work with us. So, yeah, it was a good meeting. Geordie Tumpalay says, TalkSport had an Everton fan on from last night's game away at Wolves, calling Rafa out. He's just not loved like he was at Newcastle. I don't think the timing is right for Rafa, though. Michael says Emery would be a great choice, but he must be given time. Even if we go down, let him build the team year on year, and success will be achieved.
No, Michael, they'll not be thinking. They're not going to appoint Unai Emery. Unai Emery will not be coming here to think about relegation. Let's be absolutely certain about this. That is nowhere near an appointment that they'll be looking at for relegation. This is a statement of intent. So I know obviously just an appointment doesn't change everything, and we'll know a little bit more as we move forward. But I don't envisage Newcastle United getting relegated with Unai Emery as the manager. And
there's his record, Liam. Played 51, won 25, drew 13, lost 13, scored 91, conceded 70, goal difference plus 21, win percentage 49%.
Yeah, not the disaster that he's painted out to be, is it really? A win percentage of 49%. I think we'd absolutely snap anybody's hands off for a win percentage of 49% in Newcastle United, considering the dross that we've been dealt with over the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree. If the show is short this morning, can we have the other half at 6? I love it. It's only 15 minutes short. We've got busy lives at the minute. So, unfortunately, sadly, it's just that little bit shorter. Big shout out to sponsors, Spider VPN, for all your internet security. Google, Spider VPN. They've agreed to stay on in November. Thank you very much. They are the boys to trust. Go to the top of your Google search list. They are there. Give them a shout. Big thank you again for staying on board. And skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. And to L&G Family Funeral Directors 0191 389 7245. And to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle. They also run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to Jab Signature as well for producing our flyers, jabsignature.co.uk. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. And you can subscribe for free, still 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video that you're watching today. It does give us a little helping hand. Click the share to your other social media and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to put a question up on the screen. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify and Podbean and other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show. And jump on to newcastlelegends.com, buy tickets for the Gibbo and Supermac talk in our Christmas do on the 19th of November at the Tyneside Irish Centre. And Peter Beardsley is on at the same venue a week later. Tickets for that are £15. And that again is the Tyneside Irish Centre. Go to newcastlelegends.com and click shop. Also, me and Supermac are on at Bobix in Jesmond, bobix.com for your tickets. That is in aid of the food bank. Don't forget, you can donate to the food bank by clicking NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk, and you can drop some money into the virtual bucket there. So get yourself on to there today and make a donation to help the food bank, please. Also, the raffle for the Beardsley trainers is still ongoing. Same website, NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk. £1 a ticket, and you can win a pair of custom-made Peter Beardsley signed trainers. The draw for that will be on the 26th at the event, and they will be in your size. So get yourself onto that website. And just a little pointer as well, Groupon and Voucher, we've got the Beardsley event next year, Saturday the 30th of January, but you can get your tickets on Voucher or Groupon, and there'll be a nice little Christmas present for somebody. If you want to send somebody a gift, you can do that via their website. Always well worth popping onto there. There's always some good deals. Okay, last couple of questions before we finish this shortened version, and just going to pick a couple out. There we go. Jan says, no way we go down if we get this lot. Donny van Beek, Tony Cruz, Aaron Ramsey, Connor Cody, James Tarkowski, and Osman Dembele would do me in January. That's a canny shopping list, Liam.
It certainly is. I think that the Dembele one is one that I definitely heard for the summer. But look, I think we'll have to wait and see, because any new manager is going to come in with an idea on who they want. Any director of football is going to come in with their own ideas too. So I think with players, we just have to wait and see. But there is a few irons in the fire. Yeah,
a lot of comments coming in about Emery. A lot of people very happy, and that's rare that you can say that in the chat. I hate the thinking that our club has to give someone time, whilst medium-sized clubs like Spurs give a manager 10 games and no one blinks. Yeah, media again under scrutiny, Liam. Lots of people pointing out the fact that we were slated as a fan base for hammering Bruce for 2 years of incompetence. Yet, the Spurs coverage has been the complete opposite, and he's been sacked after less than a few months in charge.
Oh, I think people just need to get a thicker skin, to be honest. I would just let them talk, because at the end of the day, we got what we wanted in the end, didn't we? We wanted this takeover, we wanted this progression, we wanted Steve Bruce out, and ultimately that's where we sit at the moment. We've got everything we want, and let them talk. Let them sort of, the media outlets, whoever it may be, let them criticise Newcastle United fans, because it's going to be a regular thing. They're going to continue doing that kind of thing, and I would just let it wash over you. Just let it wash over you, and don't even think about it. Don't even build into this narrative that they want to. It's everybody against us. Just let them have their say, and don't bite. Just don't bite. Just let them have their say. Don't worry about it, because if there's black and white shirts lifting trophies above their head in 10 years' time, I'll certainly not be worried about what some bloke on TalkSport's been saying about the Newcastle United fan base.
Good advice, Liam. Good advice. Shredder says they call the Europa League the Emery Cup. He's won it 4 times out of 5 finals. He says that would do for me nicely.
Of course it would. It would be a good little stepping stone for bigger things beyond that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. Graham Coleman says, if Emery's appointed, has the Big Six approved this?
Nobody's worried about them anymore. They're worried about us.
Yeah, the less we see the tune in the media, the bigger the shocks will come. Tim says, choice, lads, homemade baked mince pie or steak and ale?
Ooh, I would say nice steak. I'd say a nice steak and ale pie, but I absolutely love a mince pie too.
I'm more of a chicken and mushroom pie kind of guy. I do like these Balti pies that you can buy.
Yeah.
They're quality. Really, really nice. And the pucker pies are the ones. Whenever you go to a football ground and they've got pucker pies in, it's fantastic. Really, really good.
Special shout out to Nana Hudson as well. She makes the best mince pie in North Tyneside. Absolute hands down.
Oh, you have to bring one for Alwaleed when we go meet for lunch tomorrow, mate. Big shout out to Alwaleed. He's in England. He's made a hell of an impression. I had him across the Felon at the weekend, and he made a big impression at Felon Cricket Club. He was delighted that Alan Shearer had sent him a message after he'd done a Shearer celebration on Felon Cricket Club's ground. And thanks to Lee Marshall at the club as well, who is going to open the doors to the ground to him, I think, at some point this week. So Lee Marshall has is going to sort something out. Unfortunately, we can't get him to the training ground due to COVID restrictions. It would have been nice for him to go up there, but I guess the next time he's in England, hopefully things will be a lot easier to get round and he'll be able to do that. But he's having a great time over in England, and we will be featuring him on the show at some point this week. John Gandhi says, will be fascinating to see who we bring in for the recruitment role. There's been an area that we failed miserably for years, bar ASM and Wilson. Very true, John, very true. Okay, 45 minutes is up. We've both got busy days, as I say. Liam, just a quick plug for where you're working at the minute.
Yeah, just keep an eye out for anything on NewcastleWorld.com. We'll be across the news probably for the rest of the day. I'm pretty tied down with meetings, but I'm very, very close to announcing my own transfer, a little bit of an appointment for who will be taking the Newcastle United role, and with all moving in the right direction and all being confirmed in the next week or so, we might even, I haven't asked Steve this, but we might even be able to get him on for a little bit of a guest appearance on a Tuesday night, just to let everybody know who'll be taking over the reins as Newcastle United writer in Newcastle World, because of course, as I announced on here a few weeks back, I'm now the editor of Newcastle World.
Good stuff, mate. Looking forward to it. So get yourself onto Newcastle World for all your NUFC information. And Liam and I will be back next Tuesday. God knows what time, but we'll definitely be back. Liam, I'll see you for lunch tomorrow, sir, with Al Walid. Look forward to it. Take care.
Can't wait.